In Israel, a panel of lawmakers has approved a first reading of the bill to dissolve the parliament. It is a key legislative step that pushes Israel closer towards its fifth election in less than 4 years. A final vote on the legalization is set for Wednesday. Now, since last week, members of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's outgoing coalition and the opposition have been sparring in the Knesset over the dissolution bill after Bennett announced the eight-party alliance was no longer tenable. The coalition said it wanted quick approval of the law, but the opposition, led by ex-Premier Benjamin Netanyahu, tried to avert new elections. The opposition and allies have been holding talks to form a new Netanyahu-led government within the current parliament. The two sides finally agreed to advance a bill that would be finalized as law by midnight on Wednesday. The bill must then be approved into further full Knesset votes. After the bill secures final approval, Bennett will hand over power to Foreign Minister Yair Lapid. According to the bill, Parliament would dissolve and there would be new elections on either the 25th of October or the 1st of November. The election date issue will be resolved in further negotiations. The opposition's readiness to dissolve Parliament indicated that Netanyahu's efforts to form a new government had stalled, but the hopes are not over yet for his return. Even as the country braces for a snap election, opinion polls predict no clear winner. As per a poll by Tel Aviv radio station, Netanyahu and rightist allies would command 59 parliament seats versus 55 predicted for parties in the current coalition. Four separate polls found that neither bloc would secure the 61 seats needed for a majority in the 120-seat parliament. While on trial over corruption charges, Netanyahu is certain to win the support of the ultra-Orthodox and extreme religious Zionist parties. Now, for more on this, our correspondent Jody Cohen joins us live from Ra'anana in Israel. Hello to you, Jody. Thank you for being with us. Now, what can you tell us about the latest on the Israeli parliament's dissolution?
Hi, Alison. Well, yes, as you said, the dissolution bill's first reading passed in the early hours of Tuesday morning in Israel's parliament. And that actually happened after a 9-hour delay that took place at the House Committee. And that's because the chair of the House Committee is Nir Orbach, who quit the coalition and wanted to give former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu more time to try to form an alternate government in the existing parliament. Now, the bill is actually going to stay under the House Committee, which does mean that potentially Orbach could impact the timings of the bill going through the legislative process. We do know that some in the opposition are still trying to form an alternate government, but it's not seen as likely at this stage. One thing the coalition and the opposition have agreed on is to increase the state campaign funding for the election by $9 million, roughly $9 million, and that's going to be paid for by taxpayers as they attempt to try and persuade the voters out in order to break this political deadlock that we're seeing. Now, the final readings of the dissolution bill are expected by Wednesday, and then Lapid will become the interim prime minister until a new government is formed. And as you said, we're looking at either an October 25th or a November 1st date for the election. But what is certain, increasingly certain, I should say, is that we're likely to be seeing a fifth election in 3.5 years in Israel.
Right. And Jody, what can we expect going forward from the current Prime Minister Bennett? Will he stand again? And with Yair Lapid continuing as the foreign minister, even when he takes over as the interim Prime Minister, what will Bennett's focus be on in the interim government?
So current Prime Minister Bennett will become the alternate Prime Minister with the Iran portfolio. But there is a question mark over will he even stand in the upcoming elections. He had made some comments about potentially his family not being so keen. But we are now this week seeing more hints that he may well stand. There's been a poll to the Yamina Party voters. There's been a rally by his supporters encouraging him to stand. And he spoke to activists on Monday in which he seemed to appear to almost be setting out a manifesto, talking about the importance of unity, of tackling the economy, security, maintaining quiet on the Gaza border. dealing with Iran and its proxies, we might see a new potential political party on the right. Maybe that will comprise of Bennett, Saar, even Lieberman and Gantz. We're looking at a broad political trend. He's definitely been speaking in those terms recently. And in terms of dealing with Iran, the latest is that the indirect nuclear talks between Iran and the US are set to resume in Qatar. Now, these will be separate from the Vienna talks that have stalled, and the UN will be acting as a sort of go-between between the parties. Now, we know that the Israel Defense Forces chief and the Mossad, that's the intelligence agency, they're strongly opposed to going back to what they see as the bad deal. But some senior intelligence officials in Israel are reportedly seeing it as sort of the best of two evils, if you like, the best of two bad options. But the majority, the consensus really in Israel is to oppose the deal. And the concern is really that by easing sanctions, you're releasing billions of dollars that Iran could then invest in terror. So we're also simultaneously seeing this development of a West Asia defense alliance. We saw the Negev summit on Monday in Bahrain, in which they furthered those discussions in the lead up to President Biden's visit to the region in July.
Right, Jody, thank you for bringing us all the latest details.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.